Israel and Iran say they have halted military operations after exchanging fire overnight. President Trump's plea for peace. For the first time in NBA history, a sitting U.S. president will attend the NBA Finals. Extensive security measures are already in place around Madison Square Garden. And tomorrow is primary day in 4 states, including Maine, where we're tracking Senate candidate Graham Plattner, who's trying to forge ahead despite multiple controversies. Hello, I'm Nicole Killian in for Major Garrett, and welcome to the Takeout. Overnight, Israel and Iran exchanged some of the most significant fire since the April 8th ceasefire agreement. It was a day-long tit-for-tat that began with a Hezbollah attack on northern Israel and ended with Israeli strikes on Tehran and other military sites. Both Israel and Iran say they have now halted military operations, but the weekend flare-up caused oil prices to fluctuate. The tensions in the region also further strain an already fragile ceasefire. Earlier today, the president told both sides to, quote, stop shooting. The relationship between President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, once in lockstep at the start of the war, now appears to be fraying. A White House official confirms the two leaders spoke on the phone this morning, but did not provide any further details. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata begins our coverage now from Tel Aviv. And Charlie, what's the current state of this ceasefire? Is it in jeopardy?
Well, Nicole, you just set the stage. That's exactly where we are right now. So maybe 12 hours ago, we woke up to air raid sirens and messages to seek shelter. That's the first time that's happened here in Tel Aviv since April. And that means that Iran had launched attacks here in Israel, largely concentrated to the northern part of Israel, but also here in Tel Aviv. That this war was back on again. And Iran said that they had fired somewhere around 24 ballistic missiles toward Israel. We know about Israel's vaunted air defense systems, intercepted pretty much all of them. A couple of them landed in the desert, but nobody was harmed in that attack. But then Israel retaliated, kind of against President Trump's orders to say, look, Israel attacked Hezbollah inside Beirut. Iran responded. Let's just call it a tie right now. Israel then retaliated, and now we're kind of in a whole pattern. We're kind of in a wait and see. But for the people of Israel here, they canceled school for kids. People weren't going to work. It felt like it was a resumption of hostilities. But as I said, we've been looking at the past 12, 14, 16 hours where we haven't seen the kind of incoming that we had expected. I mean, I hadn't heard that for a while, certainly since April. So we are in a hold. So to say the ceasefire, certainly it's fragile because there are multiple ceasefires going on here. The U.S. and Iran, that seems to be holding because the U.S. and Iran have traded fire. The U.S. and Israel and Iran have traded fire. Israel and Hezbollah have traded fire. But right now, we kind of press pause on where we are right now. So fragile, but not destroyed.
What more do we know about the conversations that have been happening between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu? And overall, where does the state of their relationship stand?
It's a tough question to answer because we know that President Trump has gone publicly to say, first of all, he instructed or at least warned or urged Prime Minister Netanyahu not to attack Hezbollah positions in Beirut. And that's really important. We went to the northern border with Lebanon because we've seen not just flare-ups, we've actually seen fighting. And yesterday, what we saw in the past 24 hours was Israel actually attacked those southern parts of Beirut, which was a red line. And that is exactly what triggered Iran to launch these attacks on Israel. And Iran said right from the beginning, if that happens, if Israel attacks those areas in Beirut, specifically those areas in southern Beirut, then all bets were off. We are not going to continue negotiations with the United States over any kind of extended ceasefire, let alone a peace agreement. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what we saw in the past 24 hours. Iran responded by firing ballistic missiles into Israel. The U.S. military, I've spoken to U.S. military officials. They said they did engage. They did engage in helping to defend Israel from these ballistic missile attacks, but they haven't attacked Iran in response. So that relationship, it looks a little bit strained because, you know, on paper, it looks like Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defied President Trump in doing exactly what he tried to tell him not to do, which was attack Hezbollah in Beirut. Iran has, you know, counterattacked, but we are still at this pause. So there seems to be some sway between the Israelis in Iran and the U.S. that we may see a sort of glimmer of hope, a silver lining that at least, you know, I'm not running for shelter right now. We're in a position where there might be a window for negotiations here because both sides or all three sides are holding fire.
All right, Charlie D'Agata, thank you so much, and continue to stay safe. Former CIA Deputy Assistant Director Joe Zacks joins me now. He's also a CBS News national security contributor. And I want to pick up where Charlie left off with some other additional reporting from other outlets, including Axios, which is reporting that the president actually warned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he could find himself fighting alone if Israel continues to escalate attacks against Iran. He also told the Financial Times that he calls the shots and not Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So what do you make of their relationship?
I think it's a strong relationship overall, but this is a complex situation, and allies act in concert, as the U.S. and Israel have done, but also allies act in their own national interests. And in this case, I think Israel's trying to manage what they see as a very serious and decades-long threat from Hezbollah, and the president is trying to manage negotiations to bring an end to this conflict with Iran. So,
are they on different pages here, though?
I think that to a certain extent, with respect to Lebanon, there's a possibility that they are on different pages. But I think that what is probably not helpful is how much airtime this is getting in terms of being aired publicly. And I think this emboldens both Hezbollah and Iran because they see a potential schism. They may not understand that this is part of a probably healthy debate between allies who have invested a tremendous amount in this operation, but have different perspectives. But the way that this is, being either leaked or intentionally relayed to the public, I think confuses Iran and Hezbollah, and maybe causing them to feel emboldened in a way that they actually are misreading the situation.
Yeah, I was going to say, does it complicate matters?
I think it complicates matters. I think it absolutely complicates matters. And I think that some of this action, beginning last week when the president said that there's an agreement for an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Lebanon. Israel said yes. The Lebanese government said yes, but Hezbollah rejected it. And so that started this spiral escalation that resulted in this weekend's activities.
And so what do you see as the path forward to try to get these talks back on track?
So I think there are a number of things. First of all, I believe that what we're seeing here is that we cannot completely diminish the importance of proxies to ultimate negotiations. I think the president has made very clear that his red lines to get the talks back on track are an agreement on opening up the Strait of Hormuz, that it be open and unrestricted by Iran. And secondly, that there be a commitment to an expedited resolution of the nuclear file. First of all, I think the Iranians need to commit to that. And I'm very happy to see that the president, despite his repeated assurances that an agreement is imminent, actually, despite that, is stepping back and taking his time and making sure that he feels comfortable that whatever agreement is ultimately arrived at is one that represents U.S. interests well. And apparently, he hasn't seen that from the Iranians yet. This recent flare-up shows also that while the nuclear file is of predominant importance, ballistic missiles and proxies are also key to hoping that there will be any long-term settlement to the conflict, not only between Israel and Iran, but between Iran and the United States, and keeping our Gulf partners safe as well. So I think negotiations will continue. It's going to take time. I don't see that a solution is as imminent as perhaps is being publicly messaged. And unfortunately, it seems to me that the Iranian regime still feels emboldened and that they have some strategic sway in this matter, and it'll be important to convince them otherwise.
All right. Well, Joe Zacks, we know you're going to continue to follow this, so thank you so much for being here and for your analysis.
Thank you.
The NBA Finals are back at New York City's legendary Madison Square Garden for the first time since 1999. And there is heightened security as President Trump plans to attend tonight's Game 3. Bags are not allowed inside the stadium. Fans were also encouraged to arrive 2 hours early for screening. The Knicks hold a 2-0 lead over the San Antonio Spurs and are seeking their first championship since 1973. CBS News reporter Jared Ochacher joins us from outside the Garden. Jared, what's the atmosphere like there?
It's actually pretty interesting, Nicole. We've been here all day, and the later in the day it gets, it actually gets quieter outside of the arena, and that's because the NYPD and Secret Service have set up a 5-block, 2-avenue barricade. Only people with tickets to tonight's game can get through it, and people with official business in the area. Anybody else, the police is asking them to stay away. But if any indicator from the past, it's going to be pretty chaotic tonight.
What other precautions are being taken?
So in addition to the security barricade that's going up in about a 5-block radius, anybody coming into the arena tonight is going to go through TSA-style security. NYPD, Secret Service, and MSG are asking them to get here about 2 hours before tip-off to get through security in time. They're also not going to be allowed to bring bags into the stadium with them. Law enforcement, again, is asking people who do not have any business in the area to stay away.
Overall, how is the president's visit being received?
So we've been speaking with people today outside of MSG, and they're saying that the president can do what he wants. He can do as he pleases, but they're concerned that it's going to cause more chaos in the area, more traffic, and more security blockades.
The president, of course, isn't the only VIP in attendance. A number of celebrities are also expected, and as well as Amir Mamdani. Who else is expected to be there?
Well, we don't know exactly who's confirmed to be here. We do know that, of course, superfan Timothée Chalamet, Ben Stiller, they're expected to be here. They've been to all the games in the past, but we do know that Mayor Zohran Mamdani is expected to be in attendance. Earlier today, he said he bought his seat for $1,000 to get into the stadium. And also, he said he's not going to be sitting anywhere near Trump. He said he's going to have the president have the president have his space.
All right, and we know those ticket prices have been pretty eye-popping, upwards of 6 figures, although it sounds like just before the game, some of those prices started to come down. So we'll see who's in attendance tonight. Jared Ochacher, thanks so much. Earlier, I spoke with former New Jersey Democratic Senator Bill Bradley. Prior to his political career, he helped lead the Knicks to 2 championships back in the 1970s. Here's our conversation. So I understand you're going to be in the building tonight along with President Trump, and you recently had some advice for the commander-in-chief about attending the game. What is it?
I said it's a free country. Anybody can go to the game, but he's got to recognize if he comes, he's second fiddle because the people are there to see these two teams play. And what is compelling about the teams are the values that they demonstrate, like unselfishness, discipline, resilience, the kind of things that we need more of in our world at large.
Well, it's been more than 50 years since the Knicks have brought home a championship. Why has it taken so long to get to this point? And how would you compare this squad to the ones that you were on that brought home 2 titles?
Well, it's 54 years, and there are probably 54 answers to that question as to why they didn't get it. But I do see a similarity in terms of these values. I mean, you know, if you think of your teammate first and yourself second, that's an important thing that the Knicks today and the Knicks in the past demonstrated and lived. If you're disciplined, you're not just flying off, but you're playing to plan. That's another thing. So this is not rocket science. It's what a team does if they want to be a champion. And I think this team has the makings of a champion. I mean, you never know it till they win 2 more games. But I'm a Knicks fan, so go Knicks.
And also, as you probably know, tonight is the first finals game at Madison Square Garden since 1999. What makes playing at the so-called Mecca of basketball so different and unique?
Well, I think it's first the fans. I mean, they applaud the pass that leads to the pass that leads to the basket. They applaud boxing out on defense, on rebounds. They applaud the subtleties of the game, and they are deeply enthusiastic and loyal and dedicated to their team. And I think you'll see that in the arena tonight, as you have in all the other games.
So do you think this gives the Knicks more momentum going into Game 3, or is this a must-win for the Spurs?
Well, it's definitely a must-win for the Spurs. I mean, ultimately, it's not a must-win until the other team has gets the fourth victory, and then Knicks still have 2 to go. But the Spurs need to go into that fourth game with a win. The Knicks go in 3-0. I mean, I know I'm going to be there on that fourth game, expecting them to be crowned champion that night. And there'll be millions of other people who will think the same thing. So tonight's game leads to tomorrow night's game. But I think Brunson or whoever said it is right. You play one game at a time.
Fans in New York are usually divided, as you know, Mets versus Yankees, Jets versus Giants, Rangers versus the Islanders, but everyone really seems to be rallying behind the Knicks here. What does this team mean to the city?
It gives them something to hope for. It gives them something to believe in. It gives them some message that unchanging values can actually succeed in your life and with the Knicks. Whether it is, as I said, things like discipline or unselfishness or resilience or responsibility. I mean, these kind of things mean something in a championship team, and they really can mean something in people's lives too. And I think they see that and recognize that and feel better about themselves.
And to that point, I mean, you know basketball very well. You also know politics very well. So do you see this as a moment or an opportunity where sports can transcend politics?
Well, I think that when you're playing for the World Championship of Basketball, it is one and of itself. It's not related to politics. It's related to excellence and to these unchanging values and to team. It always has been, always will. And that's why people always come back to it, because we want a glimpse of what is possible. And to believe that that's possible in our lives at large and in the world and in the country is, to me, inspiring. And so, to me, that's what these games are all about.
All right. Well, former U.S. Senator and presidential candidate and Knicks All-Star Bill Bradley, we thank you so much for taking the time tonight.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
And still to come on the Takeout, Democratic Senate candidate Graham Plattner is on the ballot in Maine after a week filled with controversy. What voters are saying ahead of Tuesday's primary. Also, California is still counting ballots from last week's primary contest, where the races for governor and LA mayor stand. Plus, we'll take you to Capitol Hill, where a growing number of lawmakers are raising concerns over incoming acting director of national intelligence, Bill Pulte. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Tomorrow is primary day in 4 states: Maine, South Carolina, Nevada, and North Dakota. One of the most publicly watched elections is Maine's Democratic Senate race. Graham Plattner is the presumptive nominee, but is the subject of multiple controversies that have put his candidacy into question. And in South Carolina, Congresswoman Nancy Mace is in danger of not even making the runoff in her bid for governor. President Trump has thrown his support behind the state's Lieutenant Governor, Pamela Yvette. Joining me now, CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns, who is following the races in Maine, and CBS News political director Fin Gomez is following South Carolina. So I want to start with you, Caitlin, and what is the energy like on the ground there in Maine, and how are voters responding to some of these controversies surrounding Graham Plattner?
Hey, Nicole, it's great to see you. I mean, this is one of the most contested Senate races in the country. If Democrats have any hope of flipping the U.S. Senate, they're going to have to win here in Maine. And what they're hoping to do is topple longtime incumbent Republican Senator Susan Collins. And it looks like Graham Plattner, that controversial nominee, but a progressive up-and-comer on the left, is likely to win his party's nomination tomorrow and appears undeterred by the multiple high-profile controversies surrounding him, which you outlined on the top there. But, Nicole, it's been very interesting talking to Democratic voters here on the ground. And by and large, voters that we have spoken to who are supportive of the Democratic Party are supporting Plattner and are willing to overlook these controversies because they have the bigger picture of the Senate at stake. But the key question is whether more controversies, more scandals will drop in this race and whether it changes the dynamic here. And this is really a test for the Democratic Party about how much misconduct they're willing to endure.
Yeah, and we obviously saw Ro Khanna there on Friday campaigning for Graham Plattner. I mean, why are many Democrats sticking by him?
You have a lot of high-profile Democrats sticking by him. Bernie Sanders just a couple of hours ago told our Bob Costa in Washington, D.C. that he is standing by Plattner and says the bigger issues are at play here. He even said that nobody in the Senate is a saint and the issues are more important here. But I want you to take a listen to how Democratic voters here on the ground are responding when we talked about this very dynamic.
I guess he's kind of scaring the establishment on both sides, and I feel like I like his honesty. I'm ready for a change.
They're concerning, but I think a lot of people have a lot of skeletons in their closet that we don't know about.
He's not perfect. I don't think there's any perfect candidate.
We're really excited about, like his whole mission and what he's speaking for and how he's representing Maine. But it can't just be one thing after another.
So those kinds of comments from voters are helping to inform a lot of Democrats in Congress. Many of them have expressed concerns about Plattner, and some have said that they're not going to support him at all. John Fetterman, of course, has been very critical of Plattner. But you have Chuck Schumer, the minority leader, who is standing by Plattner, as well as other high-profile Democrats. So this will really kind of test this idea of do the ends justify the means. And in this era of politics, I think that is a big question that could be answered in November. Meanwhile, Collins, for her part, is kind of letting this all play out. She has said that these allegations against Plattner are very serious and that he needs to answer questions. So we'll see. We did talk to voters here on the ground, too, who are supportive of Collins and note that her experience is an asset, and she's the senior leader of the Appropriations Committee. And to some voters here in Maine, that kind of stuff matters, too.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns in Portland for us tonight. Thank you so much. And now, of course, want to turn to our political director, Finn Gomez, heading down south to South Carolina. Yeah. So obviously,
a state you know well, too, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah. So what are you watching for there in terms of the races for governor, Senate, and certainly the number of congressional races as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the headline there is the governor's race. It's specifically the Republican governor's race there. There are 5 people running, as you know. One of them, as you mentioned, is Congresswoman Nancy Mace. She's a big headliner. We know there's been sort of a tumultuous relationship with the president. At one point, she was backed by the president when she was running for Congress back in 24. That wasn't always the case. It's gone back and forth.
Yeah, and why didn't he back her this time? I mean, she's been supportive of him.
2 words: the Epstein files, right? As you know, coming from the Hill, she was part of that bipartisan push, mainly from Democrats, to push to have the Epstein files, revealed, right? And essentially, that was something that irked the president and his allies. Last week, he endorsed the Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette in that race. She's considered the front runner. Really, though, there's the 5 of them have been grouped together, all within a few points of each other. But if you look at this latest polling, she's maybe 3 or 4 in that race. Look, it's close. We'll see what happens tomorrow.
I mean, do you expect the president's endorsement to carry a lot of weight?
That's a big question. She does have a history of overcoming previous races, previous endorsements by the president for her opponents. Like back when she was running in 22, following her criticism of the president in his January 6th involvement, he endorsed. He was former president there, but he endorsed her opponent. She defeated that opponent. But later sort of pivoted and became a close ally of the president from the Hill. But now, what we've seen this election cycle, what we've seen this midterm cycle, and especially during during these primaries, he's overwhelmingly, his picks have won in these Republican primaries. We did see some deviation of that in Iowa last week when he supported Randy Feenstra, who was a gubernatorial candidate in that Iowa race. Feenstra lost, but for the most part, that was, he has been pretty dominant in his picks. I think it's a crucial factor here tomorrow. South Carolina has changed. The dynamics of that race, of that state, have changed. It's become a little more purple, if you will, from some influx of Northerners, especially for the pandemic to this point. But it's a steep uphill climb for Mace at this point. I'm not a Knicks fan, but I will say that I do think that the Spurs have maybe a better chance of winning this at this point than Nancy Mace does.
You had to get that one in
I had to. I saw Jared out there. I had to get that one in. But we'll see. We'll see how that works out.
All right, Finn Gomez, thank you so much. Next, 3 million more votes to count in California. Who's up and who's down in the LA mayoral race? You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. It's been 6 days since California's primary day, and voters are still waiting for final results. Here's a look inside one of the facilities where workers are processing mail-in ballots. About 3 million ballots have yet to be counted. In the governor's race, Democrat Javier Becerra earned his place in November's 2-person runoff. Republican Steve Hilton is currently in second. In the Los Angeles mayoral contest, Democrat Nithya Raman has surged past Republican Spencer Pratt. Whoever prevails will face incumbent Mayor Karen Bass. I am now joined by CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, and Head of Data Science for VoteHub, Zachary Danini. So tell us what happened in the mayor's race and the governor's race this weekend. Explain why this is taking some time to sort through, and who should we be watching and why?
Hey there, Nicole. Yes, we're still here watching this. This chart here tells the story where you see what you described, where Rahman started gaining, and each of these dates on the board, 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", she started to climb and climb and then has gone past Spencer Pratt here. Now, we've teamed up with VoteHub for this election coverage. So, Zach, tell us, what do you see inside these numbers?
Yeah, so in California, we're only getting about half the vote reported on election night. And we knew that the outstanding vote that would be counted later would be more Democratic and younger. And Rahman, who's a progressive, will do better with those Democratic voters. And even compared to Karen Bass, the other Democratic line candidate in the race, Rahman will do better with the younger voters who are now having their vote counted.
And that's so key because you look at how steady Karen Bass is. Now, on one hand, okay, she's steady, but what that tells you is that Rahman is cutting into that Democratic vote in larger and larger measures. And in fact, let me bring this up and I'll show you. If I just break down the individual reports that we saw, the things that stand out is, okay, Rahman did a little better 6'3", a little better 6'4", but then you start to see her compared to fellow Democrat Bass, right? She starts to outnumber her on each of these reports, 6'6" and 6'7", and that tells you the story of why she's able to gain, right?
Absolutely. And what's cool is when these votes are being reported, you can stratify by assembly district, which is a more granular, geography. And the assembly districts that are younger, more renter heavy, and often more progressive, have been reporting many more votes later than earlier, which is where Rahman has been doing better than Bass. And it's now she's been able to edge ahead of Bass even among Democrats in the last few days.
So important. And the other way I think you can tell about those maybe left-leaning ballots is that Tom Steyer within L.A. has also been doing well. Ostensibly, he's been gaining with that type of voter. He's certainly been targeting those type of voters. And that starts to tell you a little story about where the governor's race is, too. So I'll zoom out from L.A. here, and we'll look at the larger map here. Now we get a story of, can Hilton hang on? And it looks like his odds to do that are getting pretty good. Can he hang on for that second place, or can Steyer catch up? What do you see Steyer having to do in order to catch him if he can?
So one big thing that's been an issue for Steyer that wasn't an issue for Rahman at all was the fact that Becerra is eating up a lot of this Democratic vote across the state still. We just talked about how Rahman was beating Bass the last few days in L.A. Becerra has been running about still 5 points ahead of Steyer among Democrats in votes reported in the last 5 days.
You had pointed out to me earlier a couple of key counties, not necessarily key counties, but instructive counties, if you will. Solano was one, Kings was another, where this was sort of an example of what was going on in that dynamic, right?
Absolutely. So California is a Democratic state, right? But if two Democrats are going to get in the top two, you need that vote to be really blue.
Yeah.
And when we're comparing the Republican combined percentage in these counties, again, Solano, Kings, they count a little faster. They're already above 90% in. When you compare the Republican vote to what Trump got in 2024, it's very similar. And we consider that to have been a good performance for Trump, often in these, heavily Latino areas. And Republicans are able to replicate that so far.
So, Nicole, that's a look at the statewide races. And as you well know, there's a lot of congressional districts that could be competitive in California come November as well.
That's right. And we know you're going to continue to follow these results as they come in. So Anthony Salvanto and Zachary Danini with VoteHub, thank you so much. Next, some Republican lawmakers are joining Democrats in expressing concerns over incoming acting director of national intelligence, Bill Pulte. The latest, we're hearing from Capitol Hill. Next, you're watching The Takeout. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are pushing back against President Trump's pick of Bill Pulte to be the next acting director of national intelligence. Over the weekend, Oklahoma Republican Senator James Lankford said Pulte is not qualified to serve as DNI director, even though President Trump says the appointment is temporary. Torian Small is on Capitol Hill with the very latest. And Torian, you know, this debate over Pulte's credentials comes as Congress faces a critical deadline this week over FISA, the government surveillance program. So do you think congressional leaders can pass this, or could this potentially be held up over Pulte's role, even if it's only temporary?
Yeah, what's curious about that, Nicole, we heard from Speaker Johnson, who said he doesn't believe that Pulte would be a part of that equation. However, we're hearing across the board, Republicans and Democrats saying that this could be potentially what stymies this very critical reauthorization during this short timeline window that they have. What we're hearing from Democrats is that Pulte is just flat out unqualified for the job. Republicans echoing the same thing in far less harsher terms. But like you said, there's Representative McCall, there's Senator Tom Tillis, Senator Langford, who's all come out against him, saying that even if the president is promising that this won't be a permanent pick, he's still just not qualified to take the reins, could potentially compromise national security, and there's someone way more experienced that should be in this role. As it relates to FISA, we've seen with the test vote that happened last week in the Senate, there's a number of Republican senators who just can't get behind reauthorizing this for a number of reasons, but also including Pulte there being a part of this.
And then just very briefly, we saw this afternoon President Trump submit Todd Blanche's nomination for Attorney General to the U.S. Senate. What are his chances for confirmation?
Well, we'll see. I mean, he does have support among quite a few Republicans, but there are a few outliers or potential wild cards that we'll be watching. We have a number of senators who've been successfully primaried by President Trump's picks. That's Senator Cornyn. We have a retiring senator and Tillis that's also stepping down. They could be potentially the ones to stop his confirmation. But I think ultimately what we saw during his hearing on the budget last week and the week before was a concern around that anti-weaponization fund potentially looming over a potential nomination from the president. Now that it's made permanent, we know that Blanche said that he would not pursue it. The Trump administration wouldn't pursue it, which potentially assuage some of those concerns from Republicans. But again, a number of wild cards on the Hill that could potentially be a thorn in Blanche's side.
All right. Should be an interesting next couple of weeks. Torian Small, thank you so much. Coming up next, a new report from Notice says President Trump jokes that he has two jobs, president and Speaker of the House. Our political panel will weigh in on that and much more. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Democrats are eyeing Wisconsin's 3rd congressional district as a potential flip in November. I spoke to Democratic candidate Rebecca Cook, who is hoping to unseat Republican Congressman Derek Van Orden. Take a listen. Why do you think the seat can be flipped?
Yeah, I think, again, it's about running a value-centered campaign that's pulling people together. So I think people in D.C. are either so far left or so far right and unwilling to work across the aisle to get things done. I'm very much a moderate Blue Dog Democrat, and I'm proud of that. And I think people are looking for less chaos and division stirs.
I want to bring in our political panel, Democratic strategist Joel Payne and Republican strategist Harrison Fields. Both Joel and Harrison are CBS News political contributors, and we thank you so much for being with us. Obviously, I spoke with Cook ahead of President Trump's visit to Wisconsin last week, but talk to me, Joel, about the significance of some of these seats, particularly in the Midwest, and kind of this message from Cook. Obviously, she's trying to strike a more moderate or centrist tone. We've seen in other races, other Democrats strike a more progressive tone. But what do you think will make the difference in terms of Democrats' goals of flipping some of these seats?
Yeah, what's interesting about Cook is she actually has both establishment and progressive support. She's got support from all over what I would call the continuum of Democratic ideas, which makes her pretty unique, and that race pretty unique, because there are other races that are frontline races where Democrats are fighting amongst themselves about, should we go the progressive vision? Should we go the more establishment vision? That's actually not happening in that seat. And I actually think that's going to be one of the top pickup opportunities. I think what is going to make it a top pickup opportunity is two things. One, Donald Trump is deeply unpopular across the country. and in Wisconsin on the issues that matter to Wisconsin voters. And secondly, Derek Van Orden is someone who has created a lot of controversy and has a lot of bad feelings he's worked up with his own constituents. I mean, he's had a number of embarrassing moments here in Washington, D.C. and back at home in Wisconsin. That will all be weaponized against him.
And of course, Harrison, staying in Wisconsin, of course, President, while there, did an interview with Meet the Press in the middle of a major rainstorm, which I can tell you was pretty big and thunderous, but maybe not as much as this interview. Take a listen to one exchange that the president had with NBC's Kristen Welker over election results.
There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk
your
about
elections in this country. We're like a third world country. Your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked, and so is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But Mr. President,
you're one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Okay, so this started off with an exchange over the anti-weaponization fund, and she questioned him about, the contest in California, which, as we mentioned, they're still counting those results. But you've worked closely with this president. I'm sure you've staffed a number of these interviews. What happened here?
The president, this isn't new for him in terms of his position on the election. This isn't breaking news. To continue to belabor the point, Kristen's mind is never going to change. The president's mind is never going to change. Why even mention it or allow the interview to get to a place where it did? There are a lot of other issues on the American people's mind right now. Affordability, housing, the border, the war in Iran. Why talk about this and allow it to go this way? I know Kristen well. I'm sure if she had to do it again, she probably would. But if you talk about the accessibility to this president, more than any president in the United States, you could pick up the phone right now and call the president. He would answer, and you would probably have a 30-minute interview, and you break news right now. A reporter from the Daily Mail just texted the president earlier today to ask him about the G7. The president of the United States texts this reporter back. Talk about access. So this president will go back and forth with the media every single day. The media understands the relationship here. He cut the interview short. I wish he would have stayed because he's able to have these conversations.
Yeah,
but he's very accessible.
I don't think Kristen would have done that interview differently. I think she did an excellent job in that interview. And first, I would say, this is a Wendy, sir. Like, what was he talking about? I mean, Kristen Welker was actually trying to move the conversation onto the issues that matter to Wisconsin voters. It was the president who didn't want to actually have a focused conversation about what voters care about. Donald Trump wanted to talk about the 2020 election, not Kristen Welker. She was fact-checking him because he lied about it there, just like he lies about it all the time. And that's and bigger than all of this, this is Republicans' biggest problem. They have to run with this. So whether it's Derek Van Orden in Wisconsin or whether it's Susan Collins in Maine, this is who you have to run with. And you can't run away from that type of crazy.
Your focus is Democrat candidates. My focus is Republican candidates. They're not talking about the election of 2020. They're talking about how to make gas, groceries, rent cheaper. They're talking about what the president has done when it comes to.
I agree.
So you're making the point that I'm making, not the one you were just making before.
Still, I would note, though, I mean, even Speaker Johnson was asked about this earlier today, and he said something to the effect of, I'm not saying it's rigged with respect to the ongoing election count in California, but he did say it stinks to high heaven. So I guess what is the value in kind of keeping this narrative alive here?
I actually think they should talk about Democrats and how they run elections. I come from a state of Florida where back in the day, we ran elections very bad. Let's mention hanging chads. Ever since then, we were scapegoated. Now we run the best elections in the country. It is no excuse why a state like California, we are almost a week past Election Day, and we still don't know who is winning that election. It's absolutely absurd. In Florida, when we get a ballot, it's automatically logged. We know the election result by 7 p.m. Election, that's like a matter of an hour. Days in California, that's a problem. And the longer we take to get election results, it breeds more of these questions. And when you sow doubt in the American people's mind because you don't know how to run elections, that's a problem. I hope California is able to change that.
One person.
There are a lot of people asking questions.
One person is sowing.
Do you think it should take a week to get election results?
No, it shouldn't. It doesn't mean it's crooked.
But when you have when you see the votes,
I'd love to get a lot of things in life faster. It doesn't mean I don't believe what the results are.
But you should be. It asks questions. Why is it taking so long?
And why can't we have mature leadership from the person who's supposed to be the most mature leader to actually not make people's distrust of the system.
The president
worse.
has been extremely the president has been consistent on this issue, and whether or not you agree with that's fine. But
consistently wrong.
And,
well, we're going to continue the conversation. We're going to go into overtime with this conversation, but we thank you, Joel Payne and Harrison Fields, for joining us tonight. And that does it for us here on The Takeout. I am Nicole Killian, once again in for Major Garrett. The Daily Report is coming up next.